Whether you like it or not, I think we are going to start seeing some dramatic changes in this country having to do with police. This story has been going viral, and rightly so. 2 Buffalo police officers are suspended for shoving a 75-year-old man who cracked his head on the sidewalk and is in hospital in a serious condition as Governor Cuomo blasts their utterly disgraceful actions. I don't care what you have to say, Cuomo. The politicians who have been running the show don't care, never cared. They're completely full of it. This kind of stuff has been happening for a really, really long time. And right now, it does seem like a lot of the rioting is starting to simmer down. But we're still seeing an overlap between the protests and the rioting. So there's still, protesters fighting with police taking action against protesters and things like that. But man, are we seeing a lot of videos of heavy-handed policing for seemingly no reason. Look, man, I follow basically everybody. I read news from across the political spectrum. And for a while, we had escalating riots and looting, exploitation of these protests. And now that kind of stuff has simmered a little bit. There still is some rioting. But now we're seeing more and more videos that just show police doing things that they absolutely should not be doing. These cops are only getting suspended, but this video is insane. I don't know if you've seen it. I don't think I can actually play it. Maybe there's some photos. It's just some old man, and it seems like he's bickering with the police. And these guys walk up and shove him. He falls to the ground and hits his head and starts bleeding from the ear. And they look at him, call it in, walk away. That's what happens. And it shouldn't. And these cops are getting suspended. But I'll tell you what, man, it's almost like they want the riots to keep happening. I think we all like the fact that people want to peacefully protest and demand justice for George Floyd. That seems to be totally out of the question at this point. I have no idea what people are protesting for anymore. They're dancing in the street. They're violating social distancing. And in New York, it's just become a complete hellscape. So here's what I think is going to happen, man. We see Minneapolis is talking about completely disbanding their police department. You might think that sounds completely absurd. There may be some kind of positive there. One thing we've talked about quite a bit is that if the Second Amendment is bolstered and people have to rely on their own defense, then maybe you can defund the police. Maybe that's a big problem these cities are facing. But things like this can't keep happening. I get it that you have these riots, these looters, and these protests. But how does that justify shoving this man to the ground? It's a 75-year-old man. You can walk around him. Some might say that maybe, they don't know the potential threat. It's like, you know what, man? If this is how you view the world, that a 75-year-old guy who's complaining should be shoved back by the cops instead of just moving away from him, I don't know what to tell you, man. I get that things are getting bad in this country, but if things are this bad, then I don't know where we go from here. I really, really don't. New York City has become a complete dumpster fire. I mean, the state is a complete dumpster fire. You got Cuomo coming out talking about the disrespect the police face, then also coming out and criticizing the police. The dude is a horrible, horrible leader. We got some breaking news, too. Apparently, according to John Cardillo, NYPD source tells me on average 6 cops a day are resigning, and that number is expected to rise. That's in addition to normal attrition for retirement, disability, etc. This is disastrous for morale and manpower. Bill de Blasio is to blame. This man, Greg Musselwhite, responded, "Those in New York wishing to defund the police are evidently going to get their wish. When enough officers walk away, who will you call for help, New Yorkers?" Here's the thing I think you got to realize. People in New York don't like calling the police anyway. Yeah, the city's got serious problems. This is what I find fascinating. You've got people who are more conservative and they live in rural areas. The police departments there are more likely to be officer friendly. In New York, you have non-community members, people who don't care about you, who don't know you, who don't care about the law, just showing up and saying, I don't want to bother with this. The NYPD, in my opinion, has serious, serious problems. Take a look at this clip. This delivery guy thought he's an essential worker. Police seem to disagree. The rules issued before the curfew very unclear, but according to the state, restaurants, bar, and food industry workers are classified as essential. This guy's carrying a delivery box. He is a delivery man to bring food to people. He gets arrested. He's screaming, "Are you serious? Are you serious?" Yep. Yeah, they're serious, man. They absolutely are serious. I don't see how we solve this problem. I do think it's important to point out that these are different departments in different cities. But I think ultimately what, I was talking about last night, the solution might be that these cities are just, you cannot have this many humans living in these places. I'm sorry. Well, unless you want extreme authoritarianism, what's happening in New York, the scale of how many people live there, it doesn't work with our Constitution. Now, you can point to countries like China, where they have like 30 different New York style cities, like 10 million people living in big cities. Yeah, and they're also a communist authoritarian dictatorship. And they don't, and people get disappeared all the time. But in America, where we have a constitution, they shouldn't be arresting a delivery guy. So look, man, I'm not saying every single cop in New York City is bad, but I can say it becomes a serious problem when the cops don't know you, don't care about you, and have no fear that if they violate the law, anything bad will happen to them, because then they're just going to do it. Do you think, listen, according to this guy, he's yelling like the app says I'm allowed to be out past curfew, like he's a delivery guy. Maybe he's wrong. But does it make sense for them to actually arrest a delivery guy? There's no compassion, and there's no humanity. Like they look at a piece of paper and it says arrest anyone. They go, okay, regardless, don't care. We're not going to think twice. This is probably why you're seeing people resign from the NYPD as much as I'll tell you this. You know what scares me? These 6 cops resigning. Some people are saying it's due to the fact that they're not getting any support. Maybe. But I'll tell you what. Sounds like those are the good cops. And that really freaks me out. The cops who are willing to resign, either because of they don't like the actions the NYPD is undertaking, they don't like the fact that they get no support from the city, or that people don't like them. There's a lot of reasons why they might be resigning right now in these large numbers. Well, I think those are more likely to be the good cops, the ones who are actually asking the question of why are we doing this? What should we be doing? And why aren't we getting the support we need? Furthermore, I think it's just obvious that a lot of people are looking at this and saying, like, come on, man. If you're a cop and they say, here's a delivery guy riding his bike or whatever, going to go bring cheeseburgers to someone's apartment, arrest him. And you're going to say yes to that? I'm sorry, man. If you're one of these cops and they put you on riot duty or whatever, and someone walks up and shoves an old man to the ground, are you just going to walk away? You know what, dude? This is the problem. I don't know what it is with these people. I don't know who these people are. There's a viral video of like DC cops whacking people with batons. And I'm like, who are these people when they go home? Why are you coming into work if this is what you want to do? And the scary thing about all of this is how job loss has affected the desperation. But I'm curious, man. Do you think, these cops are doing this? And again, I'm not saying literally every cop. I'm saying the ones we're seeing in these videos who are doing these stupid things. The good cops apparently are just quitting outright, which is bad. We're going to end up with nothing but the bad cops. But I'm wondering if because of unemployment going down so much, because of unemployment being so high, it was recently announced that it's going down. Because it's so high, I wonder if a lot of these cops are just scared. They don't want to be one of those people who loses their jobs. So they'll do what they're told. This is similar to what we see in many dictatorships. I'm not trying to say that right now we are dealing with police acting like a dictatorship. No, what I'm saying is in countries like Venezuela, they tell you straight up, you work for us, you get the food first. So the poor people are starving and angry, and the cops and the soldiers come out and suppress the protests because they don't want to lose their access to food. So it's not the same thing for sure. But there's like a similar thing there where a lot of these cops probably just don't care. I don't want to lose my job. I'm going to do whatever I'm told, whatever. I don't know, man. There's apparently some story. I don't know if it's true or not. They said that in New York City, they were purposefully hiring people with low IQs to be police officers. And there was like some lawsuit about it. That might just be, propaganda from the left. Something I've heard. I don't know. Probably pointless to bring up. But what's happening across this country is similar. It seems like our police departments, whether you like them or not, whether you're in favor of these big city cops or not, they're falling apart. Santa Monica police chief faces calls to resign after officers watch businesses being looted and do nothing. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, cops. I know there are a lot of good cops. Met them personally in my life. I've been saved by cops. Someone tried mugging me in Chicago. Some plainclothes guys jumped out of nowhere, saved me from a mugger. It's a true story. I'm glad they were there. I appreciate that. I appreciate that when I've had serious problems and have called the police. Well, not perfect. There are certain things I've been able to have taken care of because of police. I've been jammed up by police. But you know what, man? This story just shows there's nothing you can do. All right. There's nothing you can do. And that's why I think what we're probably looking at is some kind of collapse of modern policing. For real. And maybe it's good. Because like I said, about community policing and people and the Second Amendment, this might be a win-win for everybody. These big cities are not the countryside. And this is why I think I find it strange. There are a lot of conservatives that just outright defend police no matter what. It's why I always kind of thought that, Blue Lives Matter protests to me, that was kind of strange. I'll tell you why. I understand the sentiment, and I understand wanting to defend police where you're from. But you got to understand is the protesters in New York City aren't protesting officer friendly. They're not protesting the local precinct for your town. They're protesting a massive multi-complex institution where you have a bunch of people who make six figures and they don't care about you, and they arrest delivery drivers or bikers, whatever you want to call it, delivery men, because they're out late at night. The things we see in New York, you can argue it helps maintain order, and I think that's fair to point out. But you can also point out that the margin of error becomes untenable, as it were. Here's why I bring up this story about the Santa Monica police chief. It's from a couple days ago. The businesses were being looted and they did nothing. You know why? Well, if these police actually tried stopping the looters, then videos would emerge of police brutality. And then you'd probably see people complaining about it. So if the cops do what they're supposed to do and arrest people and the people fight with them, then the videos make them look bad. So a lot of cops in New York who aren't getting support say, I'm not going to do it. Many are resigning. And many others just stand around. We've also seen reports that police are just standing around, not doing anything to stop it. Could be why Tom Cotton wants the military called in and why people are saying the National Guard should be called in. A majority of America, according to Morning Consult, 58% wants the military called in. And maybe it's for this reason. These cops, this police chief, look, I'm sure there are a lot of people complaining right now that the cops aren't doing their job to stop the looting. The problem is, no matter what they do, people will come after them. And the same is true for New York City and many other departments, which is why I think, ultimately this may result in some kind of complete change to how policing works. It might actually get very, very bad for some time. But, one thing I've brought up a lot about, I want to go back to what I was saying about Blue Lives Matter. It's like, I totally get it. The officers who lose their lives and all that stuff, that's horrifying. And it's happened a lot. There's been a cop was ambushed, I think, in Vegas, critical condition. This horrifying stories. But the weirdest thing to me, as more of I guess you'd call it a civil libertarian. I don't mean big L libertarian. I mean like liberty-minded individual. I don't like being in a big city and having cops show up and arbitrarily make up rules and just arrest you when you're protesting peacefully. And I've seen it happen all over New York. That's why I have very little sympathy for a lot of these New York cops, especially when I see a video of them arresting a delivery guy. I believe in the Constitution, and a great argument was made to me about the Second Amendment a couple of years ago. The other night I was on Crowder, and he asked me when, I had my, moment where I switched or realized it. And I said, someone mentioned to me that my view on reasonable restrictions on gun ownership would constitute reasonable restrictions on speech. And I thought, that's actually a really good point. No one's ever brought up to me. Right. Okay. Well, there's no logical situation where I can argue one amendment should be restricted, one shouldn't. Good point. All right. Well, there you go. I can't argue it, right? Now, I mean, honestly, with all the rioting and looting and the police standing down, there's no real argument at this point against it. And it's kind of like everybody needs to get a weapon. You may have seen that Crowder actually, I guess, got Sig Sauer they're going to send me a Sig M400 or something. So, yes. Yeah, at this point, outside of all that, I think the police can't do it. And that's the main point, right? Look, man, I'm a milquetoast fence sitter, they say, right? But there's a reason for it. Because each and every one of these cops, each and every one of these departments, each and every one of these cities is very, very different. But there are major cultural differences across the country. In rural areas where you have smaller populations, you're more likely to know the police, and the police aren't just held accountable by some review board that might, file a lawsuit or, take their pension or some other nonsense. It's their neighbors who will shun them, and they don't like that. So in smaller policing, it works, but these big cities have become disasters. Big cities like, Los Angeles County is massive and spread out. So Santa Monica is very different from the LAPD, for instance. But what are they going to do? It's all different everywhere. And in these big cities, there's no solution because everyone's going nuts. This is something that I call it's the scaling problem, right? And the easiest way to explain it is if 100 iPhones are given out to celebrities, and 1% of those iPhones break, then you have one celebrity saying, my iPhone broke. And everyone goes, oh, that sucks. And that's it. If they give out 100 million iPhones and 1%, the same margin of failure, 1% break, then you have a million people screaming and everyone's freaking out like, whoa, what's going on with these broken iPhones, man? It's the same failure rate. It's just because you've got too many. So here's what happens, I think. With New York City, you have so many people. You might have a similar percentage of, unarmed people being beaten, arrested, unlawful arrests, malicious prosecution or whatever. But when you take 13 million people and you put them in a city, and we're a country that respects, the presumption of innocence and things like that, you'll end up with a similar margin of error, but you end up with a larger number, period. So people tolerate less failure as the population grows. So let's say you have, 100 people and one person gets whacked by a cop and arrested. They say, well, they look into it and say that shouldn't have happened. That guy shouldn't have been hit. It's one time, we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. You have 100,000 people. Now you have 1,000 stories, in the same time span. And people are going like, what is happening? And they'll call it an epidemic when really it's the same percentage. So this is why I think we're going to see a radical transformation in policing. I think as these communities grow and grow and grow, we can't operate in the exact same way because the connection between the police and the community is gone. It's completely gone. I don't know ultimately what that will result in. And it could also be that big cities just don't work. They don't, unfortunately. You'll see more videos of this old man being knocked down by a cop. And you'll have these cops are being told what they can and can't do, what they have to do. And you'll end up seeing tons of cops start resigning. And that's what we're seeing now. The system is buckling under the pressure, and it seems like it's on the verge of collapse. So you have two potential scenarios. In New York, 6 NYPD resigning every day, apparently. On average, 6 a day are resigning. In Santa Monica, people are demanding the resignation. Now, some people I see in response to the NYPD resignation, they say things like, oh, these people will regret it. I see people make reference to the Minneapolis Police Department saying, oh, these people will regret it. I'm not so sure they will. I'm not. You know why? They're defending the looting and the rioting. Let them have what they want. You know what, man? I know people who, people have messaged me saying they're from the Twin Cities and stuff, and they fled. I've gotten messages from people saying they're getting out because they see how bad it's getting. But look, when you have these riots break out, and the left defends them, saying it's trauma and anger, the police are going to try and stop that because the police are trying to maintain order and, to an extent, protect life and property. Residents, I'm sure, want the police to do this. But these same residents aren't coming out and supporting the police. These same residents aren't active themselves in stopping the violence. Most of them just shut up and don't say anything. That leaves you with a large vocal minority saying the rioting is good. And that means the police will have no support and they'll resign. And then those residents who said nothing will probably just leave. So what's left? The people in the city are the ones that cheered for it and they'll get what they want. I don't think they realize what this will be like. I don't think they realize what's happening in New York City. It's the craziest thing about this Tom Cotton op-ed where he said, send in the military. They're acting like he was talking about targeting peaceful protesters. He wasn't. He was talking about targeting the opportunistic looters who are showing up in Rolls Royces in Midtown Manhattan, smashing windows and stealing stuff, not protesting at all, manipulating, exploiting, and taking advantage. But all of these people on the left get mad. So I say, fine, give them what they want. Stop complaining about it. And we've seen it. Santa Monica police chief just stood by and watched things get looted. Hey, man, you were complaining about the cops. So here's what you get. Unfortunately for the conservatives and the business owners, this is what's happening. So I'll tell you what, man, if the police do their jobs when it comes to rioting, there will be videos coming out saying that the police are brutalizing people. Don't get me wrong. Like I'm livid about that old man and all these other videos where the cops seemingly have a heavy hand against peaceful protesters. And yeah, seemingly for no reason. I guess the way I can kind of wrap this up is there is no way to solve this problem. Maybe if the police stop doing anything, they stop trying to stop the looters. Maybe if the police departments get disbanded or whatever they want to do, then the responsibility will fall on individuals. And maybe then they will get a taste of some real hard times. Maybe those hard times are what people might need to experience what life will really be like. Yeah, it's funny. They don't know how good they have it. You know, they don't know how good everything is for them, how safe they are, because they've not been to other places where they don't have these benefits. I've been to countries where the police are literally corrupt, where they walk up and they say, pay me or else. I've been to these places. It's not like that here. So there's going to be a rude awakening for a lot of these people. I don't know. I don't know where we're going, but I can say because of all of this, the rioting, whatever, the police brutality, whatever, like a 75-year-old man getting knocked down. I'm sorry, dude. No excuse for this. There's nothing. There's nothing. At a certain point, you as an individual have to decide whether or not you're going to take responsibility and just walk past the guy or something like that. Or have a couple cops take him and pat him on the back and walk him through. Instead, they shove him. It's not working. So I think we're headed towards complete chaos. I really, really do. Especially with the escalation of force from the extremists on the left. I think it's going to get crazy. And what's funny is they talk about disbanding the police. They're focused too much on looting, rioting, and protesting, and they're ignoring the fact that extremists will absolutely move in the moment there's nothing that will stop them. I don't think it matters to any of these people, though. They don't think ahead. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I'll see you all then.